So I just wanted to look at issues around playblasting that you're having. Saying a ridiculous amount of time loading zip file. Okay. Using AV Foundation. Now the catches with me showing this is that I don't have that. I have QuickTime on mine, so things will be a little bit different, and maybe that's where the problem is. But we can just work around that in a couple ways. So I'll show you a couple things, and I think one way or the other we'll get this worked out. So the 12-second thing, maybe that has something to do with that AV Foundation thing. Anyways, so first I'll show you kind of how I would normally do it. What I would do is view camera settings, no gate, right mouse click, play blast options, format QuickTime, encoding H.264. Now, what I would say is, you're saying you don't have QuickTime, and again, I would try installing the QuickTime plugin, etc. And if that doesn't work, then try just the AVI option and see if that solves your problem. Then you can always process it in Adobe Media Encoder to turn it into a QuickTime or an MPEG-4, which is probably even better. Quality 100%. Display size from render settings, scale 100% here, 1.0. And kind of want nothing selected here. Okay. And play blast. And let's actually give it a new name. Browse, and let's do down build 04. Okay, play blast. All right, and this will take a minute. It's good to let me actually stop this because this is going to bother me if I don't set a good example here. So what I like to do is say show none and then show polygons, or I guess it would be nerve surfaces and polygons. So that way you don't get any other weird little lines. And the other thing that I normally do is turn off the view, which puts this where it says camera 1 here, gets rid of that view name, and show ornaments, which is like stuff like that. So and let's just overwrite that last one. So now we'll have a much cleaner looking play blast. So we'll let that go. What I'm going to show after this, just to use this time while you're watching this, is hardware render, which is essentially the same idea as Play Blast, which is really sort of a series of screen snapshots in a way, but it has all these advanced options that make it work much better, and you can get a very quick render with with a pretty decent image. So it should automatically open the file. No? Okay. Just grab this here. And so I can see here it says 9 seconds. So, 270 frames divided by 30 frames a second is 9 seconds. So the length is working out. In general, the first thing I would check if there was a problem with the length is your frames per second. Hit the animation preference button, go to settings, and I can see that you're 30 frames per second. So don't know why you're getting that weird length thing in After Effects. We should be able to see if I open After Effects that I get the same file length. And if you don't, you don't have to use an Adobe Media Encoder to convert your file to a QuickTime or MPEG-4. You can also use After Effects, whatever you're more comfortable with. Although lately, I think you have to use Adobe Media Encoder more. They have this new, or at least relatively new to me, this add to Adobe Media render queue project. thing. Drag that in. I mean, I can just tell right now. Well, let's just drag it to a new sequence. And we can see that time code, it's 8. Yeah, it's basically that's 9 seconds, like, right? Because we're starting on 0 is why, right? So if it started on frame 1, then it would be exactly 9 seconds. But that's one frame short of 9 seconds in counting, but that one frame is because we're starting frame 0. So it is indeed 9 seconds long. So there's that. So now let's say you're having problems, or you want a slightly better looking renderer without taking a lot of time. Let's look at hardware render. So I'm going to go to my render globals, or render settings, I should say, right here. Change this to Maya Hardware 2.0, and so we're going to have to change a few of these common things. So we'll change it to, I tend to like TIFF files. This is important. You have to change this to name.number.extension for it to be animated. Frame padding 4 is fine. You can see what the names will look like. It'll be called town build 001, 002, blah, blah, blah. Put in the start frame, which will be 1, and the end frame, which will be 270. Unless you want to start with frame 0, which you can. But no, you're starting on frame 1, so that's fine. And a renderable camera. So this is camera 1. That's very important to, let's get rid of that one. To set this, got some other kind of garbage cameras in there. The HD 720 is fine for this. Okay, so those settings are good. Maya hardware. I like this screen space ambient inclusion. Looks nice. You can see what that looks like if you turn on. Oh, I hope it comes back. Okay, so I just paused the video there because that took a very long time to process. That looks kind of crazy. So let's not try to preview this in viewport 2.0, and let's do legacy high quality viewport. Hopefully that doesn't take too much time to go back to that. So that took a scary, crazy long time. I don't know what happened there. I don't want to touch that again. Okay, so let's just see how it turns out. So I've enabled screen space ambient inclusion, and ambient inclusion is like sort of like this self-shadowing where objects kind of, it's not like a cast sharp shadow, but it's kind of like, how in the area kind of around and underneath something it gets a little darker. Motion blur looks good. You can turn that on too. Anti-aliasing helps as well. This will slow it down a little bit, but it doesn't take that long anyways. So is there anything else in here? I think nothing we really need. Okay. So once you've done all that, make sure your project is set. File, set project, and I believe I've already done that to this Silver City thing. Okay. And then from the rendering menu, do render batch render. So I'll pause the video while it's doing this, but you should, you'll get that message, no problem. You should see results, saving a temporary file, and you see it starting up, and then you should start seeing individual TIFF files coming in one at a time. They should be pretty quick, even with those options on. It shouldn't be too bad. I'll let the video run until we at least see a couple of them. It sometimes takes a little while to start out, like it is now. Sometimes less than this. But let's see. Okay, here we go. Good. So yeah, you can see there's the first image, percent of rendering done. It says 0, so pretty soon you'll see that counting up. Let's see how this does. It's taking actually longer than I would suspect. I did turn on a lot of options, so Alright, well, I'm just going to pause the video while it's doing this because it's taking too long to watch in a video. I just want to unpause for a moment here and just to show you once it got going how quick it's going. So right here it's showing those are images, so it's doing until I say something, but it's doing probably better than an image a second, so that's pretty quick. So once it's done, I'm going to bring it into After Effects, and here it is. And you see, I'll just select the first one, and it'll know to look for a TIFF sequence. Oh, by the way, it's in the images directory of your project file. And so I'm going to import, and that should just use the default options here. Okay, I'm going to drag that down here. Hit the 0 on the numeric keypad to play it back. And you can see it did that same weird looking thing it did when I used, when I looked at the viewport 2.0. So I don't really know what's going on with that. So let's try adjusting some settings here. And I can use the render button. So that to see an individual image. Okay, so that's looking crazy. So let's change some of the options in here and see what's doing that. So I'm going to start by turning off ambient occlusion and see if that's. Oh, and by the way, if you click this button, that's render view, and then I can click this guy and that saves the image, and I can quickly compare subsequent images. So let's render again. Okay, well, it got rid of some of that weirdness. Now the question is, why is it so insanely bright looking? And I don't know, but let's look at your lights. So this is ambient light, ambient light, ambient light. So that's a lot of ambient light. I have a feeling if let's hide these two, Control H, and let's render again. That is looking a lot more normal. Okay, let's see what happens now if we turn ambient occlusion back on. Where was that? We still got any of that weirdness? Yeah, that's looking very weird. Something to do with the way that background thing is done? I don't know, but it's not really helping us any, so let's skip it. Alright, so I'm just going to batch render again, and that should overwrite those images. Render batch render, and I'll pause to save you the boring process of watching. Okay, I'm back in After Effects, and I'm going to reload footage. I just rendered using the same name, so this should just bring it in. Yay, look at that. And then of course I can just render out a movie from After Effects. So this is a way, I sure don't see any motion blur or very good anti-aliasing, I must say. I feel like you can get this looking a little nicer. Because see these jagged edges, the anti-aliasing should clean that up. Take another quick look in here. Motion blur. Enable. Open fraction. Oh, I think I unchecked that. Oops. Let's go back to camera view and hit the render button. See how much smoother that is? It looks so much nicer. And then let's get to a frame where it's moving more, and play with these motion blur settings. Let's just try one here, for example, and see if we see any motion blur. Ah, there's some motion blur. Doesn't look that clean though. Can try more samples. Let's see what it looks like with 16 samples. Yeah, a little cleaner. Maybe not quite so much. Maybe not 1. Maybe go to 0.5 or something. Yeah, that looks cleaner. Okay, gonna batch render one more time. Okay, once again, back in After Effects, right mouse click, reload footage, so much better. Okay, 0 on the numeric keypad, and you end up with something pretty clean looking, you know. So, it's better than a play blast. It's not quite what a render would do, but it's a nice kind of compromise, and it can get you around your play blast issue for a pretty good presentation. Maybe you don't like the motion blur, you can turn it off, but certainly the anti-aliasing helps.